Can we please get some consistent and logical responses? How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki apparently battling with Dr. Anthony Fauci over the idea of the pandemic being over with or not. She's saying one thing in front of the White House press corps, and he's saying something else on television, and it's not really lining up. Now, you would think that they work for the same people, under the same administration, under the same umbrella, that they would have a unifying message. She go out there and say one thing, he go out there and say one thing, and they match up. But that's not really what's going on, okay? Anthony Fauci, quite frankly, is not even matching up with himself. He'll say one thing 1 second, and then the next second, he'll say something totally different. Now, before I go any further into it, let's roll these clips. First, we're going to see Jen Psaki, and we're going to see and hear what she said. After that, we're going to see Anthony Fauci. We're going to see and hear what he said. After we get done watching both, I'll come back. I'll talk about what they said there. Then I'll give you the rest of my 2 cents and my deep, detailed analysis. And then I'll wrap it on up with a nice bow on top. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
So there's no question that we're in a different moment in our fight against COVID. But we also know COVID isn't over and the pandemic isn't over.
Dr. Fauci, let me broaden this out and ask you, here we are, it's the end of April, it's the spring of 2022. How close are we to the end of this pandemic?
Well, that's an unanswerable question for the following reason. And I don't want to be evasive about it, but let me tell you why I'm giving you that answer, Judy. We are certainly right now in this country out of the pandemic phase. Namely, we don't have 900,000 new infections a day and tens and tens and tens of thousands of hospitalizations and thousands of deaths. We are at a low level right now. So if you're saying, are we out of the pandemic phase in this country? We are. What we hope to do, I don't believe, and I've spoken about this widely, we're not going to eradicate this virus. If we can keep that level very low and intermittently vaccinate people, and I don't know how often that would have to be, Judy. That might be every year, that might be longer, in order to keep that level low. But right now, we are not in the pandemic phase in this country. Pandemic means a widespread throughout the world infection that spreads rapidly among people. So if you look at the global situation, there's no doubt this pandemic is still ongoing.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. Good to be with you.
All right, so you saw that, you heard that. Now, what am I to believe? Jen Psaki's like, okay, well, we can't say the pandemic's over with yet. That's not really a real thing. Anthony Fauci's like, well, that's unanswerable. We can't answer that. But then he answers it talking about, well, we're not in the pandemic phase of the pandemic. Tell me how that makes sense. We're not in the pandemic phase of the pandemic. We're not in a tornado phase of the tornado. We're not in the hurricane phase of the hurricane. Like, make it make sense for me, because I'm having a hard time being able to piece it together. But to talk about what he said, he's saying that, oh, we don't have all these really big numbers and whatnot going on, the way they were before, all this, that, and the third. So we're not really in that phase of it. So what does that mean? Can we say it's over with? Because if we're not in that phase, if things aren't that bad, and the virus is not going to go away, because let's be clear, regardless of what someone may think, or what they may have been told, viruses don't go away. That's not how this works. You know, I also saw a lot of guys putting their mask on, talking about, well, if you put the mask on, the virus is going to go away. No. That's not how that works. First of all, they'd already came out and said your masks don't work. Unless you got some kind of gas mask or some really super high quality mask, but you don't. Most likely you have a Black Lives Matter, Paw Patrol, Yu-Gi-Oh!, some kind of random mask you got on the ground in the airport that some dude in China had his feet on for about 24 hours before you got it. You got all kind of foot smuts all on your mask. You putting that right on your lips and nose and mouth, right? You have that mask on. That ain't doing nothing for you. Matter of fact, you probably getting microplastics inhaled into your lungs as a result of wearing the mask all the time, rather than getting any kind of health benefits as far as blocking the virus from getting into your airways, right? Your mask, most likely, 99.99% of the time, is not going to work, period. But some people think that that's going to be the ticket out of the so-called pandemic because it'll kill the virus. That's not how that works. Viruses don't go away. All they do really is adapt, they change, mutate, and then you got all these vaccines and whatnot going around. That's going to accelerate or at least affect the mutation and or the rate of mutation. That's it. There is no cure. So it's going to be here. The most you can do as a regular person is just be hygienic. You know, you go to the bathroom, do number 2 or whatever, wash your hands when you leave, wash your hands before you eat, just real basic hygiene stuff. Wash your hind parts every night or whenever you can. I saw a TikTok where the person was like, freshly showered as of 3 days ago. I'm like, see, that's a problem right there. You starting the whole Ebola. You starting the whole pandemic right there. You get a whole petri dish on your body. You probably been out there rolling on the ground, outside, walking around, playing basketball. You smell like full court basketball in the middle of a gymnasium. It's ridiculous. So that right there is probably causing more health problems than anything that you can get from a viral infection. But different story. I'm going down the rabbit hole and I digress. The whole point is that people think these things work and they're going to kill the virus. It'll end the virus. That's not going to happen at all. They should just come out and say that it's going to be seasonal. Okay, we're getting into very warm months now. You're not going to have very high rates of infection. So it is what it is. By the time the next cold season comes around, you're going to have higher infections. The same thing with the cold and the flu. It's the same thing. Because what they say, like coronaviruses, isn't that like a cold? It's not the same thing as a common cold, obviously, but it's similarly related. It's in the same kind of family. Corona, that's like dealing with your cranium, right? Dealing with your head cold. I'm not saying it is a head cold for the YouTube censors and snitches out there. Shout out to y'all. I'm just saying it's in the same family because of the name structure. And we know what we're talking about, a cold, not the virus. We're talking about the cold. We know when that affects you the most. You typically don't get colds when it's 85 degrees in July or 100 degrees in August. That's not how that works. It's a seasonal thing. So let's just say that and stop playing all these games. Jen Psaki's out there talking about, oh, no, well, it's not over with. We can't say that. The actual pandemic, as far as what we were doing and all the measures we were trying to go through to prevent this thing from moving around, that has to be over with. We can't do this anymore. We can't do the lockdowns anymore. We can't do the mandatory this, mandatory that. We just got rid of the mask mandate on flights and in airport. And that was a great thing to do, by the way, getting rid of those mask mandates. That was the most ridiculous thing because if you're on an airplane, the air on an airplane is safer than an operating room. The air is filtered every 5 minutes. You're not that's the safest place to be. It's better than a restaurant for sure. You go into a restaurant with a mask on, or some of you guys may still do that. Like I was seeing that today. Matter of fact, I think was I outside? I might have been outside and I was seeing people do that. It's like, why? You're outside at a restaurant with a mask on at the table. Why? You're going to take it off to eat. You can't pass food through the mask. What are you doing? But anyway, most of us are not going to be wearing masks in the restaurant or whatnot. But an airplane is safer than a restaurant because of how often the air is filtered. Is the air filtered in the restaurant? Is there some kind of like humidor or something in the restaurant where you just can breathe? Like that's not going on. Okay. They got to open the air, open the door, open the window. Unless they got them firehouse windows that roll up, you're not really going to get any fresh air like that. Not that much, aside from the basic HVAC system. And that's really it. Okay, so the whole thing was silly to begin with. It didn't work. It didn't make any sense. It caused more harm than good. Look at all the businesses that are closed down, supply chain shortages, job loss, cash inflation, and then the real estate crisis. Well, I won't say crisis, but the real estate bubble that's being blown up to epic proportions right now is in part, in my humble opinion at least, it's in part caused by this a pandemic, because there's so much money being printed, so much money floating around, people are putting it in different places. Okay, rather than buying some ridiculous nonsense, some cheap Chinese crap to put in my house that I collect junk and be like a hoarder. Rather than doing that, I'm going to take some of this money I got and some money over there I had in savings and put it toward a house down payment. And if everybody has that same idea, or if a lot of us have that same idea, you're going to have kind of a run on the market. It's going to cause the prices to go up because of the lack of supply. And you got inflation on top of that. You got interest rates going up. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. All these problems have been created by the reaction to the pandemic. You got high suicide rates, high drug overdose rates, heart attacks, all kind of stuff like that, high stress. A lot of different things have been caused by this. So I think we're done with that. I know I'm done with that. I refuse to go back to anything like that. Masks and lockdowns, and I didn't really do that much anyway. I mean, really, around here in Tennessee, the only time I really had to wear a mask is when I flew, for the most part. And that's really what I remember. It was locked down for a brief period of time, but as soon as it was over with, back, 2020, early 2020, I was out. I've been flying, traveling, doing my thing, and I've not had any problems. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and fear life because the virus ain't going away. It's not going anywhere. And in the meantime, I got a life to live. I'm not going to be afraid to live my life because someone said that I should be scared of this particular thing, that if I am not 1,000 pounds or if I don't have some kind of comorbidity, I probably won't have a problem with. Oh, and I'm also not over the age of 65, 75, 80 or whatever. I'm in my 30s. So I'll be okay. I'm not going to be afraid of my life. And I think a lot of Americans feel the same way. So regardless of what Anthony Fauci and Jen Psaki think or disagree on or whatever you want to label it as, regardless of what they come to the table with, regardless of how they feel and what they think and what they say, most of us, 99% of us, are done with the pandemic. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? How do you feel about what Jen Psaki and Anthony Fauci said about this whole thing? Why don't they agree on it? Aren't they work for the same person? Like, aren't they in the same place? Did they not have meetings together, or do they communicate at all? Whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. You guys know where I'm at. I am 100% done, as are many of you. I refuse to go back. It's just not going to happen. You know, I'm seeing a lot of fear-mongering stuff on the internets and on television. They're talking about, oh, there's a brand new bird flu in Asia. All right, that's fine. Great. Okay, so what are they going to do? You're going to recall some chicken wings or something like that? No more Wingstop for a day? All right, that's fine. But I'm not going to get locked down again. I'm not going to put no mask on. I'm just going to continue living my life. I don't care about no bird flu, alligator flu, duck flu, horse flu, pig flu. I don't really care. I'm going back to my normal life the same way I have been ever since the scandemic really became ridiculous in my eyes 2 years ago. I refuse to go back to 2020 in that time where everybody was panicking for, in my humble opinion, no real reason. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.